A while back, I produced a video where I showed off the first laptop I ever bought back in 1998. It was this woefully underpowered Olivetti 486, and while I loved it to bits, it got me thinking about the machine I lusted after back in the late 90s, the Compaq Armada. You see, while the Olivetti was stylish and quirky, the Armada was a proper professional machine, with its 12-inch TFT display, its Pentium MMX processor and 32 megabytes of RAM as standard. This was the bee's knees of laptops at the beginning of the second half of the 90s, and I wanted one oh so badly. Like most things in a teenage boy's life, my want was born out of jealousy. My best mate's dad had one, and he'd let him borrow it to play Doom. My dad only had a Packard Bell 486, but I'm a grown man now and well enough off to waste money reliving my youth, so here's a Compaq Armada 1592DT from late 1997. It's a bit of a chunk, to be honest, with Compaq yielding to the rounded design cues of the mid-90s, which makes this thing a little bulbous in places. That said, it was a really well-spec'd laptop for the time, with a 233MHz Pentium MMX processor, 64MB of RAM, a 3GB hard disk, 12-inch 800x600 TFT display, floppy drive and 20-speed CD-ROM drive. This one is in pretty good condition. The only damage I can see is where this blanking panel for the optional modem card should have been. It looks like that's had a wallop at some point and fallen out, but other than that, this is a very clean looking machine for being quarter of a century old. To the left side of the machine, you've got the built-in floppy drive, the PCM CIA slots, the aforementioned modem cover and a single USB 1 port. Round the back, you've got serial and parallel ports, a VGA port for an external monitor, a replicator port for connecting to a docking station, the mains power connection, as well as an infrared port and PS2 for a mouse or keyboard. Round to the right, you've got the 20-speed CD-ROM drive, a Kensington lock connector, the battery, headphone and microphone jacks, and up and down buttons for the volume. Opening it up, and you've possibly got the world's smallest trackpad combined with some of the largest speaker grills I've ever seen on a laptop. Above that, you've got a pretty decent looking keyboard, though weirdly it doesn't include a Windows key. Above that, you've got an array of buttons. There's a slider for turning the power on, next to a separate button also labelled power, which is a bit weird. This central bit almost looks like a car binnacle with the status LEDs dotted around it. And lastly, to the left of that, you've got 4 hotkey buttons, which I'm guessing can be set up to launch applications via a software tool. Now, this example came to me from eBay. The seller had it listed for parts not working. He sold it to me with the original Compaq case and a power lead, but nothing along the lines of any recovery media or a driver CD. The reason he listed it for parts was because whenever he powered it on, it asked him for a BIOS password, and he had no idea what it was, so as far as he knew, it was only useful as a donor machine for somebody who already had one. Hence why I got this little slice of goodness for £11. Thankfully, getting rid of a power-on password is actually relatively simple. You just need to track down the backup battery, remove it for a couple of hours so the BIOS resets to factory settings, and then reconnect it. In this case, it was surprisingly easy to get to the backup battery. You just remove the main battery and floppy drive using the provided plastic latches, undo any screws marked with the keyboard logo, flip it back over and off pops the keyboard with a little leverage from a screwdriver. And here underneath you can see the backup battery, which connects via a fly lead to this header over here. Remove that and give it a couple of hours and this laptop will conveniently forget everything it's ever known about a password. Then just plug it back in and Bob's your uncle. So with that done, I found that this machine would actually boot up to Windows, but it wasn't the stock Windows 95 that I was expecting. Nope, someone thought it a good idea to stick Windows 2000 on this bad boy. Quite why anyone thought this was a good idea is beyond me. Technically, this machine does meet the minimum requirements for Windows 2000, but it was never going to be a fast experience. Booting up took an absolute age, though we do get to look at this classic early 2000s wallpaper of Jessica Alba. A quick look around this machine showed that it was last used around 2004. The previous user had left their CV on here, which clearly I won't be sharing, but suffice to say, if you're looking for someone with a penchant for 2000s soap actresses who also knows how to bartend, then I think I might know a guy. Now that I knew this machine booted, I decided my goal should be to return it to its factory condition, which would have been Windows 95. A vanilla install went on just fine, but it didn't quite look right. Time to go on a driver hunt. Thankfully, I was able to find a whole bunch of drivers for this machine online via the website hpnotebookdrivers.com. Now, I don't normally approve of sourcing drivers from sites like this, but the website owners made it very clear that they're simply acting as an index for HP's FTP site. And sure enough, if you copy the link shown, they do point to HP's FTP server. Now, rather annoyingly, it seems that the files I downloaded from HP's site are in fact programs which need to be copied to the hard disk and then extracted to floppy disks so that it can be run on the laptop. So it took a bit of time to extract each one to a floppy and then run it. Eventually, however, I was able to install all the original drivers, including those for the configurable buttons at the top of the keyboard. One of the files produced this configuration diskette, which takes the place of a traditional BIOS utility. I was quite confused initially with this machine when I couldn't get into the BIOS via a keyboard shortcut, and it turns out it's because this machine was expecting to find a small partition on the hard disk which contained the BIOS utility. Now, obviously whoever put Windows 2000 on this machine probably wiped that partition, so the only option for accessing the BIOS is via a floppy disk. That said, there wasn't much in here I could actually change. I was kind of hoping that I could find a screen scaling option in here so that games which displayed at a lower resolution would fill the screen rather than giving black bars on all sides, but I guess this machine just doesn't support screen scaling at all. One other cool utility I downloaded was this one that created this DOS real mode support shortcut. It basically allows the laptop to boot into MS-DOS with driver support for the CD-ROM sound and a few other things, and this makes it super easy to play DOS games which just don't work well from within a Windows 95 environment. So in terms of game performance, this machine will play pretty much anything you throw at it from this era. Point and click adventures like Discworld 2 work well within Windows 95, though you do unfortunately have to deal with these awkward black bars as the display can't rescale lower resolutions. Games that can take advantage of higher pixel counts, like Age of Empires, are a joy to play though, and that TFT display really does look good. If you push it too far though, like with 1997's Unreal Tournament, you quickly reach this laptop's limitations. It's certainly not a smooth experience, and frankly I think I'd rather play later titles like this on a more modern machine. One other thing I noticed while testing this machine, largely because I tripped over the extension lead, almost unbelievably the battery on this thing still works. And in testing it held the laptop up for well over 20 minutes, at which point I got bored and plugged it back in. For what is possibly an original battery to still be working over 20 years later is amazing, and testament to Compaq's high quality. Well, right up to the point where HP bought them and ruined everything. So there we have it guys, I hope you've enjoyed this brief look into this late 90s classic. It really was an interesting time for laptops and IBM compatibles in general. The pace of development was just so quick, but this machine managed to stay relevant and somewhat usable for its original owner for at least 5 or 6 years. And I'm thrilled to add it to my collection where I'm sure it will become my go-to device for sofa-based gaming. I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you have, please give it a like and consider subscribing to see more content like this. Be sure as well to let me know your thoughts on the Compaq Armada line in the comments below, and until next time, bye bye.